I'll be demonstrating Judy's Magic Cast-On. It was invented by Judy Becker. My version is slightly different than her original version. This video is the same as my original video, but I have just a couple of extra tips for you. This is a great way to start toe-up socks. You need 2 needles. They can be 2 circs, 1 long circ for the magic loop that I'm using here, or you can start with 2 straights to knit with double-pointed needles. So to begin, we're going to start with our needle tips facing to the left. As you can see, I have a marker on the bottom needle, and that's just to help you see that this needle will always remain as the bottom needle. So the setup for your hands is similar to the long tail. The stitches are formed from the tail and also from the yarn attached to the ball. So to begin with, we are going to take our yarn and we're going to drape it over the top needle with the tail in front. And that's how we work with long tail. But here's where it gets a little different. We're going to take this tail and we're actually going to move it to the back. So you can see what it does is it twists that yarn and places a stitch on the top needle. And that is actually our first stitch. Now we have to set up our hands, and let me just lengthen this tail just a little bit and I'll set up my hands. So the tail is in the back, working yarn is in the front. I'm going to place my hands in between my thumb and my forefinger, in between those two, and spread my hands out. You can see that my thumb and my forefinger are forming something similar to an L, and we're going to keep them that way. We have 1 stitch. This is our top needle. Bottom needle is the one with the marker on it. We will be moving our needles in this fashion. And we have, as you can see, 2 strands. I have 1 strand on my forefinger, 1 strand on my thumb. And when I'm working the cast on, I like to think of opposites attracting. On the top finger, that is the strand that will load a stitch on the bottom needle. And the bottom strand, or the one on my thumb, bottom, will load onto the top. So opposites attract. So we will always be loading up our needles in pairs, meaning top needle, bottom needle, top needle, bottom needle. So as you can see, we have 1 stitch on the top needle. So it's time to load a stitch on the bottom needle, the one with the marker here. So to get the stitch for the bottom needle, it's going to get its stitch from the strand on my forefinger. So I will move my needle tips facing kind of up to the ceiling. I'm going to come behind this strand on my index finger and I'm going to scoop up with just that lower needle. So now I have 1 stitch on the top needle, 1 on the bottom. So we're going to be always working in pairs. So now it's time for the top needle to get a stitch. So for the top needle to get a stitch, it gets it from the bottom strand. So what I like to do is move my needles this way, so kind of down. And you can see here's the strand. I'm going to take my needles and I call it splitting the yarn, meaning I'm going to move my needles, the yarn's going to be between, and I'm going to move it from front to back, and I'm going to scoop up with just that top needle. So now I have a strand on the top needle. Time to get a stitch for the bottom needle. Bottom needle gets its stitch from the top strand. So needle tips to the top, or to the ceiling, I like to think of it. Go behind the strand on your index finger and scoop up with just that bottom needle. Now I have 2 on each. Time for the top needle to get its stitch. It gets it from the bottom strand. Move my needles down. Split that yarn in between the 2 needles from front to back and scoop up towards you with that top needle. Time for the bottom needle to get its stitch. It gets it from the top strand, needles to the top. Go behind that strand on your forefinger and scoop towards you. Now it's time for the top needle. Move your needles down to the thumb strand or the bottom strand, split that yarn in between the two needles and scoop up towards you. Even out these needles a little bit. Time for the bottom needle to get its stitch. Needle tips pointing up. I'm going to get it from the top strand, behind and scoop towards you. I'm going to do the pair one more time. Here's the top needle. It gets its stitch from the bottom strand. Move my needles down. Split that yarn in between from front to back and scoop up towards you with the top needle. Needle tips to the ceiling. I'm going to get the bottom needle's going to get its stitch from the top strand, so I'm going to go behind that strand on my forefinger and scoop toward me. So now I have 5 stitches on each needle, and your pattern will tell you however many that you need. And because this last stitch that I just put on there really is just draped over there, I have to secure it so that it doesn't run away. So what you'll do is you'll take your working yarn and your tail, and you'll just twist it. Sometimes you can even twist it twice. And we're going to hang on to that twist for just the next step. So we have been working the entire time with needle tips facing to the left and the bottom strand with the marker here. So now we are going to switch it up, and we're going to rotate the needles so that they're facing now to the right, with the bottom needle, the former bottom needle, you can see is kind of here on top. So hanging on to that twisted stitch for dear life, I'm going to take the former top needle, which is the one without the marker, and slide it out into the right. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to knit this stitch here that I really have been holding on to that with that twist here. Make sure that you knit with your working yarn and not the tail. Go ahead and knit that first stitch. And let's see, I split that yarn, so let's see if I can do a better job of that. There we go. Go ahead and give that a nice firm tug and knit that stitch. And now you can let go of that twist. And then I'm going to go ahead and knit the rest of the stitches that were the former bottom needle. Now when I get to that last stitch, I can remove that marker. So now you can see I have knit half of the stitches, or 5. So I'm going to turn my work, reposition my needles so that all stitches are on the needle tips. And you can see here, now my needle tips are facing right. I have my working yarn. It is attached to this back needle here, which is just what we want. And then I'm working with the magic loop, which I think is the easiest. I'm going to slide out that back needle, or the one with the working yarn. And then I'm going to go ahead, and you can see I need this working yarn back here. I'm going to go ahead and knit these stitches. Now, where my version of Judy's Magic Cast On is a bit different, in Judy's original version, these stitches on the second needle were actually twisted. But if you cast on like I showed you, mine are not twisted, and there's no need for that. So just plain old everyday knit. And now I have completed one round, and here is the very bottom of my toe. So to continue to knit, if you were to knit a wedge toe, which is really quite easy, I'll go ahead with the magic loop. If you'd like some further instructions on magic loop, I have a video on the magic loop. But to work beginning the toe, I would make sure that the knit stitches are on the bottom, purl are kind of on the top. I'm going to slide that back needle. We're going to think of front needle and back needle now. Slide the back needle out. And you can do increases on the first and the last stitch of each needle. So you can work either a simple knit front and back, knit into the front and the back of that first stitch. And then we'll go ahead and work to the last stitch on the needle, and we can work another knit front and back. set up our needles again. So the magic loop mantra is all stitches on the needle tips facing right. Working yarns attached to that back needle. So I'll slide that back needle out. And another way to increase, and I'll just show a different version, is to knit the first stitch, and then you can work a make one. So that's just another, but it's still, both versions are a wedge toe. So for this side, I'm just going to do make one. So you would knit one, make one, knit to the last stitch of the needle, and also make one. You can do make one left, make one right. You can get all kinds of fancy, whatever your pattern directs. But that is the very tippy toe of a toe-up sock using Judy's Magic Cast On. Happy knitting!